Hello, today I'm going to be discussing training staff on the prompt hierarchy. During this presentation, I will be discussing the definition of a prompt and why prompting is important in ABA. I will also be discussing the prompt hierarchy and briefly discuss least to most and most to least prompting, and then I will go over some of the types of prompts that are often used in ABA. So what is a prompt? According to Cooper, Heron, and Heward, 2007, prompts are supplementary antecedent stimuli used to occasion a correct response in the presence of a discriminative stimulus that will eventually control the behavior. In other words, it is an instruction, gesture, demonstration, touch, or other type of cue that is given to a learner before or during their response to help them complete the task or direction that has been given to them. Prompts are helpful cues that occur before the behavior is emitted, which is also known as the antecedent, and can be used to help someone begin to complete a specific task or direction. So why is prompting important? Prompting is important because it increases the likelihood that a learner will emit a correct response and reduces the possibility of errors being made. When implemented correctly, it can increase the rate of responding, lower frustrations, and help the individual learn more efficiently. The utilization of prompts is a positive way of teaching and therefore encourages learners because students continue to make progress and aren't discouraged by hearing the word no time and time again if or when they make errors. It is important to remember that all prompts need to be faded or phased out over time or when the learner is successful in completing the task independently. To prevent prompt dependency or to prevent the learner from becoming reliant on the prompts. Practitioners may want to minimize errors because they have been shown to impair discrimination training. Minimizing errors may reduce the likelihood of problem behavior during instruction as well. So this is the prompt hierarchy. A hierarchy of prompts is used for prompting procedures and has a minimum of 3 levels. So the first level that you'll see at the top is always the independent level in which no prompts are used, and then the remaining levels are sequenced from the least amount of help to the most amount of help, as you can see in this visual. The last level of the hierarchy should be a controlling prompt, or one that results in the learner doing the behavior correctly. So there are multiple types of prompts. The first two that I'm going to discuss are stimulus prompts and response prompts. A stimulus prompt is any type of prompt in which the instructor does the materials in a way to help the learner give the correct response. This is done anytime we change the way the materials look, how we arrange them on the table, or anything about them. An example of stimulus prompting could include making a specific button brighter or larger in order to help it stand out to the learner, and then that will ultimately increase the chances of the learner pushing the correct or the desired button. Response prompting, on the other hand, is sometimes called errorless learning because teaching using these procedures usually results in few errors by the learner. And the goal of response prompting is to transfer stimulus control from the prompt to the desired discriminative stimulus. So some examples of stimulus prompts often include visual prompts, gestural prompts, and positional prompts. And then some examples of response prompts are verbal instructions, and those can either be vocal or non-vocal, modeling, and physical prompts. And I'll go over those a little more in the rest of this presentation. So another type of prompt is the full physical prompt. This is the most intrusive prompt according to the hierarchy, and this is used to physically guide the learner's hands to complete the task or direction given to them. This is also often referred to as hand-over-hand prompting, and it involves manipulation of the learner to control or direct their motor movements. And as I said before, it is considered to be the most intrusive prompt on the hierarchy. The next type of prompt is called a partial physical prompt. When using partial physical prompts, you are still touching the students, but you are providing minimal physical guidance as compared to full physical prompting, in which you're using full hand-over-hand guidance to complete the task. So for partial physical prompting, this may involve touching the student's elbow to begin the movement, but the movement is led by the student as opposed to the instructor, like you see in the previous one that we discussed, the full physical prompting. The next type of prompt is modeling, and it involves showing the learner what the correct response looks like. For example, if you're teaching the learner how to clap his or her hands, you would clap your own hands to model what that activity should look like, and then request the same action from the learner. Gestural prompting involves giving some type of gesture or movement that shows the student what to do. This can involve pointing, nodding, making eye contact, or looking at a specific item or area. So, like I said, the instructor would point to or perform an action that indicates what the next step of the task is, of whatever has been requested of the learner. The next the next prompt is a verbal prompt. This type of prompting can take several forms, but it typically involves providing some type of verbal language to increase the likelihood that a correct response will be emitted by the learner. So a direct verbal prompt gives the exact answer. For example, if you hold up an image of a cup and say cup, you're providing the learner with a direct verbal prompt, telling them exactly what you want them to do or what you want them to say. An indirect verbal prompt, on the other hand, gives a hint without providing the full response. So an example of an indirect prompt would be asking the learner a question like, where should we go next, after retrieving a cup to fill up with water from the water fountain, which signals to the learner to say, we should go to the water fountain next. The next type of prompt is called a visual prompt, and this provides some type of cue to the learner on how to respond. These are in addition to natural cues. So some examples of visual prompts can include pictures, text, photos, or videos, and they can also be positional, such as putting the correct item or required items to complete a task closer to the learner, which you can see in this image of the banana and the grapes. So if a teacher is saying, give me the banana, placing that banana closer to the student is going to increase the likelihood that they will select the banana as opposed to selecting the grape, since the banana is closer to them on the table. So the next slide that we're going to discuss is referring to independence. There are always naturally occurring cues that occur before a behavior, which are also known as antecedents, and it is important not to confuse those with prompts. Our ultimate goal is for learners to respond to these naturally occurring cues in order to engage in the behaviors that we are teaching them independently. So with the use of prompting, learners, through new skills, they will have more opportunities to be successful and receive access to reinforcement, which ultimately will increase the likelihood that they will emit the correct responses in the future and rely less on prompting from the instructor, decrease that prompt dependency like we discussed before. This is a list of the references in which I pulled some of my information from for this presentation. As you can see, I relied on Cooper, Libby, Neitzel, Weeks, and Woolery. And then last but not least, my image references for all of the images that were provided throughout this presentation. I hope this was some good information for you guys to see firsthand, and thank you very much for watching.